I don't want to make this all about me because ultimately, who cares? But I care. So maybe you care a little bit. It was an interesting weekend around here. As I was just telling you, it had some good stuff. Had my son's birthday party. My daughter had another competitive dance competition, so we were away at that. But down here, for my livelihood, how we do this show partially and some of the other stuff that I do, I was just telling you I had a flood down here, and it was legitimately underwater. It was not a fun time to deal with. Still dealing with it. It's all torn up behind me. Try to make it presentable as I could for the YouTube audience, but it's been wild around here. And yet, with all of that happening and legitimately being underwater where I needed a boat to get around this basement in my studio, I feel like I didn't quite have as bad of a road trip as the Guardians did. It's been a rough time for Cleveland and fans trying to watch and enjoy any baseball here for the last two series at least.
Yeah, they were flooded by losses. Our
Yikes.
eyes were flooded by watching sloppy baseball.
Thank you for that.
That's why I'm a writer. Gift with words.
Tell me it was not as bad as I feel it was coming out of that.
No. It was ugly. I mean, it was just, you know, when you can tell that a team is like, they're right there. I mean, I like Guardians Yankees in the ALCS. I know they lost in 5. That series was really close. Every single game swung on a certain pitch or a certain half inning sequence, right? So this is not that. This is, I mean, we can use the analogy here. It's like a boat that has like 12 holes in it, and I don't know how you plug all of them at the same time. And this is not, I'm not, you know, the hyperbole here. It's 9 games. It's they haven't played a home game yet, but in terms of the last week of baseball, like it wasn't like, it's a 3-3 game in the 9th and they couldn't get the big hit when they needed to. No, it was pretty ugly. Like they just didn't look like the better team in either series. The one time they won this week, their best player had to hit 3 home runs. And they were able to squeak by to win that one. So, yeah.
Need more of that then. You're just saying Jose needs to hit 3 home runs more consistently and everything will be fine.
Yeah, 1 home run to cover for the error he made that led to a couple unearned runs, and then
jeez,
he's been on. I think he's got the second highest OPS in the league. Like he's been incredible. Stephen Kwan has been awesome at the plate.
But you know him. You know him. You know that eats at him more than what the offensive numbers are. Yes. We can start right there. The infield defense has been pretty terrible to begin the season. I said in the series against San Diego, it was rough. They were the better team, clearly. They got outplayed. There's also some weird stuff where errors at the wrong time or an infield hit, and there's 7 runs on the board before you even blink. I'm not saying that removes all blame from pitchers. Okay, plays aren't made behind you. You still have to then go out and make another pitch. But still, that series didn't bother me as much as this Los Angeles series did. Maybe it's because I don't envision the Angels being as good as what the Padres will likely be by the end of this year. But it's just more sloppy. Nothing was really fixed. There were some encouraging signs, I think, in the pitching. Ortiz, I'm a little bit encouraged by that outing there. We can spend more time on that. But the infield defense, that's the one thing where I felt you got good defenders everywhere. You shouldn't be having blips more often than not. You shouldn't be having really good, solid players like Jose making errors that lead to big innings, or at least more pitches than making pitchers work harder than they should. Brian Rocchio's defense, more the same, where he's capable of making a great play, barehanded play, awesome play, something that makes you stand up and go, wow. And then an easy one, you aren't able to make that. That infield defense, I don't know what they've got to do there. I don't know what Kai Correa's got to work on with this group, but it ain't good enough so far in the first road trip.
What are the strengths of this team?
They've got a superstar that can hit 3 home runs in a game occasionally.
I just don't know, like, what is their formula to win? It was very obvious and easy last season, and it worked. But that was last season. And it takes time to develop an identity and figure out the answer to my question, I just feel like we have no idea so far. And I think they believe, I mean, Stephen Vogt kind of hinted at that during the week. This was just like the antithesis to who they've been in recent seasons. They didn't steal their first base of the year until Sunday, and they stole 3. They have been extremely sloppy defensively. Nothing is timely. They don't get hits with runners in scoring position, and they don't limit the opposition from delivering in key points of the game. And you think about how they won in 2022, how they won in 2024. It was the opposite of all that, right? They were the team that was playing super smart, super fundamental baseball, and not making mistakes, especially costly mistakes. And this is not a team that's ever going to have a big margin for errors. So to play the style of baseball that they've played over the last week plus, like that's not going to work. Like it was nice to see the stolen bases on Sunday. Okay, that's still in there. Good. Like they were the only team in the league that did not have a stolen base going into Sunday. They've stolen 3. Their opponents have stolen 11. Like that's not a good ratio. So I don't know. I feel like they need to clean a lot of things up. I feel like they need to figure out playing time. I never know like how you get a young guy going. Does he have to play every day? Do you limit him to just spots where you think he has the advantage? And they gotta get hitters going. They gotta get started. Like the starting pitching's been a mess. The bullpen, like we haven't really seen. We haven't really seen a game yet that is like maybe the Sunday in KC, but they had opened that one up enough where they didn't. You know, we haven't seen that. Bybee goes 6, and then it's Smith, Herron, Gaddis, Clase, and you win 3-1. Like we have not seen that game yet. So I'm struggling to like understand, and it's okay. Like it's 9 games. We have to give that disclaimer like every 5 minutes here. But I'm struggling to understand like what this team's specialty is. I don't know what the formula is for them yet.
I think what's frustrating is that's not something you can just say. I mean, you can have an intention of we want to run the bases this way, we want to play clean defense, we want to have a great bullpen. Okay, you can say that and declare that, but you kind of have to get into the season and show that those are your strengths. If we would have looked at this team last year, we all believed in the bullpen. We didn't necessarily know the names that were going to emerge. We thought that the bullpen was capable of being a strength, but it didn't become what it became until they just went out and pitched like that. So I think it's frustrating because you want the identity from minute number 1. What is this team going to excel at? And for some teams, it's a lot easier. For this one, when you have so many younger players, when you have so many people that have had good performances in the past, but you need to see it consistently, you want to know what are your foundations built on, but this team doesn't have that yet. They're going to need time. I think there are a lot of guys here that even haven't performed good. Tanner Bybee has a rotten start, gives up 7 runs. Am I concerned long-term about that guy? No, I'm not. I think he just needs time to get into the season. Every great pitcher can have a start like that. I'm not overly concerned about that, but there are parts of this team they've got to show us. Even go back, and no one wants to make the comparison, but go back to 23. A lot of the same pieces are in place, and still some of the same pieces are in place in 24 that bounced back and had good years. But every year is its own animal, and they've got to show us what they're going to excel at. And the things that they can control, like catching the ball more cleanly, yes, everybody's capable of making an error here and there, but that can't be the standard. And certainly it can't be enough that it's leading to bigger innings, higher pitch counts, guys having to work harder than they should to get out of an inning because somebody didn't make a play for them, and then giving more opportunities to great players who then turn around and do something with it. It's frustrating because you need time to establish what it's going to be. But so far, pretty much every facet of the game that they want to feel strong in hasn't been there outside of Jose Ramirez swinging the bat like a god right now.
And maybe that's the glass half full.
E2.
Speaking of sloppy, the glass half full look here is they probably can't play any worse, right? I mean, You've gotten nothing out of right field, catcher, center field, shortstop. Second base has been okay. First base has been okay. Starting pitching, you've gotten... I mean, Luis Ortiz was the first guy to go 6 innings. The first technical quality start. And it was the bare minimum for what a quality start is defined as. 6 innings, 3 runs. You know, the bullpen, I don't know. We haven't seen them tasked with like what we're used to. We have not seen enough of the let's cycle through them. Let's go. Smith, Herron, Gaddis, Clase, done. You can't touch any of the 4. We've seen hitters touch them a little bit, but you know, it's not I need to see more than 4 appearances for a reliever to know, regressions here. Point is, that was a really ugly week of baseball, and it's easy. Like, we could be sitting here a week from now and being like, hey, they had a good week of baseball, and you add it all up, and they're about even. I feel like Jose will come down to earth, but there's nobody else who needs to come down to earth, right? Starting pitching, like,
no.
I don't know that they could be worse. Their ERA as a group is 6.70.
I think it could always be worse. I feel like we've seen worse. The other thing that I think is adding to some of the disconnect and maybe frustration and just not feeling good. There's no good vibes right now after this week of baseball. I think part of it is they haven't even played at home yet. I mean, making the joke, but how could the season be over already? How can we establish what this team is when they haven't even set foot in the place they're going to call home for half the year? It's wild to me that they are the last team that's going to get their home opener in baseball. I know every year some team has to be the last one to do it, but it's weird. Not only have they not played at home and you do 3 series away, but you also do it with 2 of them being on the West Coast. So those games are late at night and you're following, but it's tough to feel like they're with you when it's a completely different time zone and they're doing stuff after you go to bed and you're checking the box score after you wake up. It's just not a normal time. And also for the team, you know, you're out in Arizona for that portion of time, then you come back to Kansas City, then you go back out west. I'm not making excuses for them. That's not the reason why they didn't catch the baseball or the starting pitching isn't great or they're not getting timely hits or anything like that. But I think it adds to the disconnect and a feeling of kind of about this baseball team. It's because you haven't even seen them play at their home stadium yet. It's wild to me.
Yeah, isn't there like a feeling of like this hasn't even really technically started?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Like, it's hard to separate, and fans can correct me here, but what is the difference between the games in Arizona in late March that were exhibition games that don't count and the games that you've watched for the last week plus? Like, just because we're telling you that they count, they're on the official schedule, but it's more of the same. It's like that team is still out there a couple hours behind, and like, it doesn't feel quite real yet. I'm with you. I think they need to be home. You need to see it for yourself. You need to see them play at a normal time. You need to see them play in 34 degrees and flurries or whatever it's going to be on Tuesday. But it's easy to use the excuse and just say, well, you know, the perfect remedy here is the White Sox. I mean, I don't know. The White Sox gave the Angels a decent series to start the season, and the Angels just kicked your behind. So you don't want to just assume you can beat up on them. The White Sox were a thorn in their side last season. You don't want to just assume you're going to sweep them and everything will be right. But I do think there's something to be said about the comfort of Progressive Field and playing in front of your home fans and, you know, sleeping in your own bed. Right. And
exactly. Do they even know what their own bed is? Some of these guys haven't even checked in to maybe their home throughout the season. So it's just weird. It's like a double whammy of obviously playing like crap, but also just being so disconnected.
Yeah.
And to not only start away, which happens occasionally, I get it, or going out on the West Coast, I know they want to get teams that maybe going to be dealing with flurries or whatever. You're trying to push that back as far as possible, the bad weather that teams like Cleveland are inevitably going to face in the month of April. So you send them out west because you assume the weather's going to be better out there in April.
Well, renovations too.
Renovations. So I understand that there are some things. I'm not blaming anybody. It's just a thing that has happened that has been this double gut punch because you haven't seen them and they haven't been at home and they're the last team to get home and they're playing like crap and it's all come together to make this poo stew.
Gross. Here's the issue. They had the same thing last year.
That's what I cleaned up this week.
They had the same thing last year. A 3-city trip to start the year. Oakland, Seattle, Minnesota. You know what the difference is? They went 7-2. The vibes were high, and they came home, and there was a little bit of excitement. You wanted to see if it was real. Now, I think they needed that last year. That set the tone for the season, and more than anything, with a new coaching staff, it allowed them to believe in themselves. I think there was a lot of internal, we can be a good team here. We've got what it takes last season. Every team tells themselves that during spring training. And a lot of teams get to the season and then they're 10-21. And it's okay, we were lying. That team last year started 7-2 on the West Coast. And I think it was, confirmed our suspicions. We were right. And, they never took their foot off the gas. This team, I don't think needed that start. I don't think they needed to believe in themselves. There's enough, regardless of what we say on the outside, they came into this season saying unfinished business. All the, when Nick Swisher threw the t-shirts around the room 11 years ago with unfinished business on those red shirts. A lot of that though, it was, how do we take it 2 steps further than we went last season? So, if they would have started 7-2 here, I think it would have been all right, business as usual, no surprise. 3-6, I don't think they're going to be oh my God, panic. We were wrong. We don't have what it takes. We need to adjust our expectations. And now let's just try to win 83 games. I don't think this team desperately needed that justification, that validation. But so they've thrived in a 3-city trip to start the year before.
Yeah, right. Which is why I'm not saying the reason why they played poorly. I'm saying that's why partially why I feel so disconnected so far. And to what you're saying, that it doesn't even feel real that the season has started yet.
It doesn't. I would it be different if they would have started in Detroit or Cincinnati?
Well,
why don't they do the Ohio Cup to start the year? How cool would that be?
Probably because it's such a big deal. You want to make sure everyone's in mid-season form by the time that happens. You don't want to be anybody working their way through. What is my bullpen going to look like in May, in June, in July, in April? Now, that is something I think is necessary to keep in our mind, too. We all have a rosy view of how the season started last year. The record is what you are, and that helped them position themselves where they could ride it for the rest of the year. But still, we looked at the bullpen by the end of the year going, it was a strength the entire season. It wasn't initially. It took some time to arrive at the final form that it was in. The guys that were in the 6th and 7th inning are the ones that bumped up eventually to occupy the 7th, 8th, and obviously leading to Class A in the 9th. So we look at the big picture because we have the benefit of looking at the big picture. Right now we don't. We have no big picture to look at, so we're looking at the most small details and freaking out about them. And some of them were pre-existing things, like the offense from the catcher and the shortstop were already major questions. And when they start the year and you're not seeing much from either, it's just a reinforcement of something we already thought. So that continues the panic there. But there are other parts of this roster. I'm not going to start freaking out about the bullpen until I have much, much more data to indicate why I should be frustrated. Now, I'm not saying don't just throw the red flags away, because we were also concerned about their workload. And how do you bounce back off of a season where they relied on them as heavily as they did? Some regression is going to be at play. I accept that. But to the point where now they're going to be a bad bullpen? No, I don't think I believe that, just based on a couple of, 3 series to start the year.
It's too early to change your stance on anything. I think that's the thing. When we say it's too early, we're not saying hey, ignore what you've watched. But I think if you had major questions about Rocchio and Naylor coming into the season, or Jones and Noel, they've done nothing to change that. Whereas if you had major questions about, I don't know, or if you thought Lane Thomas was going to have a great contract year here, and he's got a 400 OPS he's played 7 games, like I'm not changing my tune on that yet, right? So it's you can be concerned by some things you're seeing. I'm not saying that this is how it's going to be forever, but the question is, like, I'm a little nervous about Lane Thomas, especially against righties. Like, a little nervous about Rocchio and Naylor just not figuring it out at the plate. But I need to see more. Even if I didn't believe in certain people, it's been a week and a half. It's been a week and a half of road games. It's been a week and a half of a game or two, and then an off day, and then it's who is in a rhythm at this point aside from the crazy third baseman who it's supposed to be on the injured list. What happened to that?
The offense is the great thing. It's the defense that's scuffling right now. And you wonder, even for a guy like Jose, I always wonder this because you are a young player and you make a mistake, that weighs on you. But what about somebody that has a track record of being a great player, but yet you're making plays consistently where you just keep, what am I doing? You even saw frustration bubbling with him to the surface after another error, and he's like, he threw something in the air. I don't know if it was dirt or gum or I don't know, but you could saw visible frustration from him. How do you? I'm not questioning his confidence, but like for someone like him, how do you go through a stretch where you have something that looks almost like developing the yips because you're a good player. You don't do things like this, and so how do you get past that? What does that look like for him? You just make good plays consistently, and then eventually you're over it. I mean, I don't question the actual talent, so it's just weird.
I truly believe that he just goes to the plate and says, "I'm hitting a freaking home run at this at bat," and that's
just so mad at what I did.
He's been a finalist for Gold Glove at third base like 4 of the last 5 years, something like that, and he hasn't won. And it's important to him. He doesn't hide that. I don't know I can't say that he thought he should have won last season. I think the organization thinks he should have won it last season, and there was some frustration there. Usually with him, it's like, okay, well, he's going to come back the next season. Defense is hard. It's sometimes you just this happens to me like once a year where I will have like a week or two stretch where I don't know what it is that causes it, if it's just like a lack of attention to detail for a week for some reason or what, but I'll have like small factual errors, like stuff that an editor wouldn't necessarily catch because it's not like a typo or something like that. And I just I'm pulling my hair out. I'm like so frustrated at myself because you can prevent it, but like sometimes it's just this stuff happens and it's just you just don't catch it for some reason. I feel like it's like he knows he should make these plays. He can make these plays. Sometimes you just don't make the play. And when that happens 3 times in a week, it's obviously rare, but it's not like if you carry that with you, it is not going to help you. If I'm thinking about that guy's name that I spelled wrong last week, like that's going to take away from what I'm writing today, right? Like so it's difficult, especially at this point in the season when that's your whole sample size. Like that's it's crazy. If you look at fielding percentage, he's like at 818 or something like that. It's like crazy low. Most guys are at 970 or even higher. And you just need more evidence. But you have to be, and he is strong enough mentally and experienced enough to not dwell on that. And
well, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Is that these players are so good that we just assume, like, you're talented. You wouldn't feel this the same way I would out here freaking out if I start making critical mistakes like that. But they're human too, and so we just assume, that dude, he's he's capable of anything out there on the field, but yet they still have to get through it just like anybody else would. And I don't question the confidence the way I would, like with Brian Rocchio when he makes a mistake. Yes, he's got a track record of making great plays, but he's had some critical errors at really awful times going back to the postseason last year. For Jose, we just take it for granted. Oh, okay, he'll be there. But I just find it fascinating for great players that have to get through a stretch like that. How do they deal with it? How do they get through it? Because we just assume that they're great, they're going to deal with it.
So Omar Vizquel won the Gold Glove with Seattle in '93, and then Cleveland traded for him. And it was like his 9th game in Cleveland. I think he booted a couple balls, and then it was a crazy game. It was like 8-8 in like the 7th or 8th inning, and he botched a pop up, and Kansas City ended up scoring and winning the game. And so that's 3 errors in the game. And he said, like, fans are yelling at him, go back to Seattle. And even Kenny Lofton was like, who is this guy? Like, what did we trade for? And he didn't make an error again for, I think, like 53 games. Now, you can't vow that day, like, I'm not going to make an error for 3 months or the rest of the season, because you're never going to accomplish that. But if you're able to flush it, and it comes back to experience and maturity and being in a good mental place in a game built upon failure. Like that's how you do it. You go day by day. And I think Jose is smart enough, but you're right. Like someone like him, and it's funny that, it's been a week and a half, but still showing no signs of decline. The bat is still quite there. Could this be the year he finally wins the MVP? But no, because his defense is going to drag down that WAR total. You're going to lose the WAR draft again. He's going to lose out on the MVP again. Like you can't think like that. And for him, I do know that it eats at him because he so badly wants to win a Gold Glove and prove that he's this. And he doesn't need to prove it, but prove that he's this well-rounded player who is so good at so many different facets. So there's a balance here where it's like, I know I'm better than this, but at the same time, like, just forget it and move on. It's tough to do. That's what makes the great ones great.
And beyond Jose, it's pitchers too. Like a starting pitcher, you got to wait. At least for Jose, you're still out there. You had a bad play. You got the next day. I mean, you even got the next inning, depending on where you're at in the game. For a starting pitcher like Bybee, just imagine, especially for him, it's eating at him. Like, how could I let that outing get away from me? Not only to have a rough patch to begin, but then to just finish so poorly and then have to sit with that for almost a whole week. How do you not let that eat at you and just destroy you in the week? And for him, obviously, he's had bad starts before in his life. Hopefully you learn how to, and this is easy for me to say, but how do you channel that into your frustration, into your side session, into whatever you got to get done? And the other thing with him, maybe I'm giving too much credit here, and I'm in the business of making excuses today for people, and I don't mean to come off like that, but I look more for reasons than I do excuses. For him, I wonder, coming off of the several days where he felt awful and losing some strength, and then you go out and you make your start. And I'm wondering, is that start fueled almost all by adrenaline in your first game
and
back?
Chipotle.
I don't know what maybe meds they have you on to make you feel better and maybe pump you up with electrolytes. I don't know, but you feel okay in that start. But then you come back and maybe the recovery isn't as good and you don't feel as strong in your next outing back, and it still takes some time to regain some of that strength and whatever weight you lost and having a rough few days of going through an illness. And so I wondered if maybe some of the aftershock of whatever he experienced to begin the year finally caught up with him in the start. That's just me looking for reasons why he could pitch. Maybe it's just you have a bad day. Maybe you have an awful day and you'll just be better for it in the future. But it did stick with me for a minute because I think anybody that's gotten over an illness, there's like that period a little bit after where your body doesn't have the reserves that you typically do. And so maybe he just was really ramped up for that first start. And then that second start, maybe that next wave wasn't there for him. And it's going to take some time to build up some more of that strength that he had before or coming out of spring training.
Could be. They'd have no margin for error. The starting pitching, I thought Williams and Bybee looked good in Kansas City, but they were on pitch counts, and it's the first start of the year, and it's they need, like, the easiest way to just get on a roll is to get 6 innings of quality starting pitching every night. That makes everything else so much simpler. They've had the opposite of that. So I don't, I think it's tough too when Bybee and Williams are back to back. And so when one or both of them don't pitch well, then it's like, all right, well, how much is the bullpen going to get used after that? And then you get Ortiz, Lively, and Allen coming up. And, those aren't guys that pitch deep into games. So they're in a tough spot. I don't, like, what's the next move? Like, if you decide...
Just time.
Yeah, I know. But, like, then what? Do you want to talk Tristan McKenzie?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not yet. I mean, there are enough guys that are a little bit higher on the importance meter than Tristan coming out and not really providing much. Like, you'll get there, and maybe you get there because somebody else, like, you need the roster spot more to cover for somebody else, but I don't think we're there yet. So I'm not ready to have that conversation about him.
Can I just throw a stat at you?
I don't know. Do I want to duck first?
McKenzie's thrown 75 pitches. How many have been fastballs?
Oh, I don't know. 70%.
60 of them. 80%.
Okay.
So if you're a hitter, like, you don't need to be a gambling savant to understand the odds are in your favor if you're going to guess that he's throwing you a fastball. And I have a feeling that that's why he's gone 3 2/3 innings and walked 5 and given up 4 hits and 3 runs. Anyway, the rotation, yeah, I think Bybee will be fine. I still think Williams will be fine. It goes back to what I said. It's like 1 start, 2 starts shouldn't change whatever your forecast was.
Just stick with that.
But, like, they don't have, this is not a rotation right now that's good enough to not get good starts from Bybee and Williams.
Sure. It's all predicated on your best pitchers pitching like your best pitchers. The good news, I mean, I did see encouraging signs with Ortiz. That looks like, again, I'm gonna keep coming back to it. Looks like a guy that's got good building blocks. It's just getting there. Might take a little bit of time. I understand that. I'm okay with that investment. Even if it results in some bad outings, I think you'll be better for that investment in the long term. We saw last year, maybe he's just the kind of pitcher that, everything's off and not really great, and then locks in like he did with the Pirates, and then look out. That guy's phenomenal. And maybe that's like a hitter that gets on one of those streaks. We talk about hitters being streaky, and then when they're streaky, they can change a game like nobody else, like John Kensey Noel. You think, oh, man, if he has a weak stretch where he's just seeing it well and he blasts 3 or 4 home runs, that changes your entire season sometimes. Guys like that are capable of living on both ends of the extreme. Maybe Ortiz is the sort of pitcher that just gets locked in, and then eventually you just count on him every time out to go give you 6 innings, 2 or 3 runs, and he's just the horse that does it every 5 days. I feel like it's in there. And see, it certainly is a lot easier to make that statement when he has a solid outing. Not great, not like, oh my God, that looks like a number 1 out there. But I can see why they would target a guy like that, why they'd want to bring him into their system, and why they'd want to work with him and make time for that investment. Because I think it's going to be worth it in the end. I'm going to stick with that until it's clear that that's not a take I should have anymore. But I'm going to stick with it.
You see the difference no walks makes when he's just attacking the strike zone. He was super efficient. I think he was, he didn't throw a ton of pitches. And so, like, he got into trouble in the second inning. Soler hit a mistake. That's going to happen. If he did that in his first start, no one we'd have all forgotten about spring training by now. So if he can continue to look like that guy we saw, and certainly that you don't want that to be the ceiling, but the guy we saw on Sunday, then yeah, you'll take that. the issue is that's like the best start you've had,
aside from
Bidey and KC.
That's not necessarily on him. I mean,
no,
yes,
I'm not.
You want to pitch better, but
no.
It's not his fault that everybody else has faltered to the point where you're expecting him to be more than what he should be.
It's been a weird pitching staff, man. It's been a weird rotation. They've got a grand total of 26 strikeouts as a starting staff in 43 innings, I think. Giving up a lot of hits. It's been a weird start. I don't know. They look flat.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's as simple as like coming home and spending a day at Crocker Park and, I don't know, going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and
sure, that's it. Yeah, maybe that's it. Or maybe we'll find out at the end of the day they're just not that good this year.
Could be.
That could be too. But I think, as we're both saying, as you feel right now, nothing is going to change outside of just more data, more time, more evidence, one way or another. For some guys, though, it's going to be tough. You had mentioned earlier, for young players, how do you get them on a roll? It's something that every manager has to work his way through. Some are better at it than others, and some maybe just luck their way into guys emerge. I'm looking at Giancarlo Noel. He is someone that I think really needs some more plate appearances right now. And below the surface, it's like the bat speed is still elite. He still has a ball that he hit, I think it was the 116 he hit. Is like the upper echelon in baseball so far in terms of max exit velocity. The bat is still, like, nothing has changed for Giancarlo Noel. Nothing. He still has, what was I looking? I mean, even the walk or the strikeout rate isn't what you would assume it would be for Giancarlo Noel. I mean, he's making contact. He's had some loud contact. I mean, the hard hit rate is the 50%. There's good stuff there, but it's 16 at-bats. It's 18 plate appearances. The guy needs to play more. But on this team with also Nolan Jones here, you're trying to get one of them sparked to get them more time. Neither one of them right now is sparking anything. Both of them, as I said, have like little bits and pieces that you're grabbing onto. But the thing with Nolan Jones, too, have you noticed? We all talk about his walk rate, his keen eye. Guys are just pumping the zone with strikes right now and saying, you want to beat us with a home run? Prove to us that you're going to do that before we start walking you again. He's seeing 57.7% of his pitches in the zone right now, which is compared to 51, 49, and 51 earlier in his career. They're just pumping the zone with strikes. They're not going to put him on base. And right now he's just swinging through way too much to really provide much lift.
Combined, they're 4 for 38. That's an issue. The other issue is none of those 4 hits are home runs from 2 guys who have 30 home run potential. So I'm with you, and this is the struggle. I remember Terry Francona talking about this all the time. How do you both protect a young hitter and allow them the chance to like blossom? I don't know. I like the fact that they're letting Kyle Manzardo play against lefties, and they should. He's 5 for 8 with 5 extra base hits against lefties. And weirdly, he's 3 for 23 against righties. I don't get it. Both of those numbers should even out over time.
Baseball.
But I like the fact that they're letting him go. They're putting him in the lineup against lefties, and they should. He should just hit third every day. Maybe fourth against lefties. But with right field, it's tough. There was an at-bat Noel had Sunday where he struck out on 3 pitches. The third pitch was like a slider that didn't even sniff the strike zone. And it reeked of, I have 1 hit so far this year. It's a single. I'm hitting the ball hard. I'm not getting rewarded for it. I'm playing twice a week. I feel so much pressure. I'm desperate. I got to get out of here and go watch The Godfather 3 to see what happens to Michael Corleone. And he just chases out of the zone. And I think
needs more bloops. Needs to shoot for some more bloops.
That's right. It's I don't know what the solution is here. It's and I also don't understand Jonathan Rodriguez's place on the roster, because you could say, okay, well, Rodriguez isn't, they believe in Noel more, so maybe Rodriguez could fit that small side of the platoon. and you give Nolan Jones some chances against lefties. But if you give Noel like 2/3 of the plate appearances in right field, you're doing Nolan Jones a disservice, and you kind of need to learn about Nolan Jones this year because he's out of options and you traded for the guy. So I don't know what the solution is, but and it's a small sample, and these boomer bust type hitters in small samples, like, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And you're right. Like, the fact that both guys are just scalding the baseball when they're making contact only adds to the idea of, like, we got to get these guys more opportunities so that translates into actual production. So how do you do that? I don't know. And I think they're struggling with it too. I mean, we saw Noel in the lineup. We just saw him getting more chances against righties over the weekend. But I is that then just doing Nolan Jones a disservice? Like, can't they just like combine into one human being?
Yeah, just go Dragon Ball Z and just fuse together.
Jones, Kensey, Nolan. What would the name be?
Stick with that. I mean, you're asking how do you get out of it, and for hitters like Noel and maybe even Nolan Jones, it's just keep running him to the plate. I mean, 18 plate appearances. What is Noel supposed to prove with 18 plate appearances unless he went deep 18 times? I mean, what are you expecting? How do you expect a guy that maybe isn't seeing the ball as well, or maybe even just hits into some bad luck? I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's some things that he needs to work out, but like the skills nothing has changed in the skills. Still swings the bat like Paul Bunyan. I mean, just a terror up there, and he's got one of the most elite bat swings in terms of speed in baseball. Does that translate into something all the time? Not necessarily, but he's still the same guy he was last year. Still the same guy, still capable of the same things. And you're right, guys like him, when you don't have a spot for him, and you just put him on the bench and you're taking the lottery ticket like late in the game that he's going to swing and hit one over the fence, okay. But don't you do better with guys that are boom or bust over long periods of time than you do necessarily in short sample sizes? Because you need to ride the wave to eventually get to when they take over a week. Like a hitter like Carlos Santana, he's miscast again here. Like earlier in his career, he's miscast as a cleanup hitter, and that's never been really what he is. And still, now they're asking him to be a middle-of-the-order bat, and that's not even at this point in his career what he's best at. But Carlos Santana is doing nothing to look like he's a bad hitter. He's just a guy that's consistently right in the middle, and I think that is a good thing to have for a team that has 3-4 other guys that are capable of just mashing. And then if you have a Santana there that's just steady, good defense, going to get on base, occasionally comes through with a home run, I mean, that is a good player for a good team to have. But right now, with everyone else outside of Jose not really showing, I mean, Stephen Kwan has been good too, but no one else really driving the ball and making a huge difference, you're like, okay, well, Santana's kind of underwhelming, but that's what Santana is. He's always safe.
He whelms.
Granola, like you need it in your diet, but it's not necessarily sexy. Like, I don't know.
You're eating the wrong granola then, man.
Well, you dip it in chocolate a little bit? Everybody needs more time. I think that's the right. That's
why do we record? Why don't we take March and April off? We'll be back Memorial Day.
Yeah, okay. But we'll see. If that's what you're after, let us know down below. It's been so long since we've seen Progressive Field, and now it looks like a different ballpark again. Tell us about what they got coming up.
Yeah,
sure.
Got to see some of the renovations, and I don't know. I feel like these have changed a lot. I remember the first renderings I saw years ago, and like the ideas that they had implemented in that, like that never became a thing. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. And I will say that I was really impressed by what they did with the old Terrace Club. And I mean, this, like how dated did that area look. Remember they had like the Bob Feller exhibit there for a while, and all the tiered seating that just looked so old. And it's cool, like with the windows and facing down the left field line, facing home plate. Like the foundation of it was cool, but it was just so antiquated. And so I wasn't really sure. Like, I obviously, like, they've had plans to create this terrace park or whatever, and sort of combine the levels in a certain way. And I think they knocked it out of the park for a couple of reasons. One, it just looks so much more modern, and they need that. There are areas of the ballpark that have not been touched in 31 years, and it's long past due. So they did that here. Number two, there's like 3 levels. So the first level, and I think maybe the second level are like North Coast Social. And there's, I think you have to have a special ticket for some of it. For other parts of this, anyone can get in. But so like you have the top level, which just like the upper deck looks so much better. So you can just stand and there are like drink rails and, you can do what you want to do if that's your thing. And then there's like a big bar area and there's tons of TVs and seating and stuff. And what the most critical part of this to me is the aesthetics. Like, as I was saying, like there are parts of this ballpark that just, it looks like it's 1994 still. And that is no longer the case. So they got local artists to create tons of artwork. There are these massive murals that just look awesome. And the thing that warms my heart when they put like history and memorabilia on display so that you will stop and you will read the little placard that explains that, hey, this is the Cleveland Buckeyes jersey that Carlos Santana wore during the 2016 season. And it's a nod to the Negro Leagues, and it's really cool. Or this is the warm-up jersey Sandy Alomar wore before the 1997 All-Star game when he was named MVP. Like, and they have a whole row of those. There's like a dozen of them on a brick wall. So it's inviting. It's celebrating. I mean, this franchise has been around since 1901. There's 125 years of history, and they're finally willing to celebrate some of it. So I think that's great. And, it's another place where if you want to sit in that tiered boxed seating on a semi-comfortable couch and watch the game, you can. If you want to sit inside and eat your fried pickles and mozzarella sandwich or whatever the heck is new, and watch the game on TV for some reason in a cozy like restaurant booth, you can. If you want to just hang out at one of many bars, you can. If you want to sit in your regular seats and say ignore all of this, you absolutely can do that. If you want to keep score and wait for the peanut guy to come by, that's your right. But in terms of like finding ways to adapt and modernize and just make things look better, I think they did a really good job with this.
I'm pleased about the Terrace Club. You're right. It just looks like you walked right into the 90s. The functionality of it, and it is such a cool idea. I mean, when you think of other places that, you remember, like, I remember growing up and hearing that, in Toronto, there are hotel rooms that overlook the ball. Like, how cool is that? You could be in the hotel room with a baseball game on. And, like, it sounds great in theory, but how do you make it play out? And it's really cool. And Cleveland has there's a restaurant where you can go to and you could watch the ball game. How awesome is that? But then you'd go there and you'd be just underwhelmed. It's not what you were expecting. So I'm pleased that they've been able to find a way to integrate that into something that's an actual event. It has become the one place in the ballpark you can find a bathroom that nobody knows about. And that was the only reason you would visit. And then you would see the Bob Feller stuff because you went into the bathroom. And that would be the only reason why you'd find all of this stuff. And this team has so much history. I'm glad that that's on display.
The Terrace Club was great in the 90s because when the ballpark was new, every company wanted a piece. So, they had more suites than anybody, and that's obviously changed over the years. But they sold all the suites. Every company wanted to be there. They want to have tickets to every game. So the Terrace Club was great because you'd have these big groups come out, have their company outing, and, I'm pretty sure, like, in the early days, like, I remember someone told me like, yeah, we served food that was essentially basically just like Applebee's, and it was like a big deal. That's what they'd serve in this fancy terrace club, and people thought it was great. But you can do better than
But
that.
at the time, that was a foreign concept for being at a ballpark getting
Right.
food like that.
Right. So, it still got used from time to time, but for most of the season, like they just shuttered it. So I think, they knew like it was, they had to do something to better utilize that space. I think they've done it. I'll still be curious. Like I need to walk by to see what it's like on a game day to understand better which level is going to be the one you want to hang out at. But you see how crowded the corner is. That's the best idea they've had with this ballpark since it opened. And the corner's been there for a while now, and it's still packed every single game. And you still see when the choo-choo train blows when the gates open, and you still see fans run there every game to grab a couple beers and carve out their best spot on the drink rails. How can you adapt that to other places in the ballpark? How can you give people more opportunities to maybe have the front drink rail and have a better view of the game? So I think they've done that. And, there's other stuff too. Like I'm excited to see what the new clubhouse looks like. They like tripled it in size. There's a new players lounge and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, look, I know people are going to say spend the money on a right fielder instead. I get it. But, the ballpark needed some updates, and they weren't going to build a new ballpark. So you have to renovate. And I think at least in with what they did down the left field line, I think they did a great job.
No, you can't just put together a ballpark and gas up your fans and then let it run its course. You can't just throw that out in a video form and let that happen.
It's insane. It's one of the oldest parks in the league.
It is crazy.
That happened overnight.
It is crazy, and I understand they want to make it one of the crown jewels of the sport, but you weren't going to get there just keeping it as it was. And I also understand those that are frustrated because they like the way that they grew up watching the sport, and they want the ballpark to still look the same. And I get that. Part of me still appreciates that, but you also have to adapt some with the times. You can't just keep screaming about times changing while it's changing around you. Part of it is the functionality you were talking about. You can't keep all these suites empty. For what reason? Because nobody is taking the company outing there anymore. So you have to adapt to what are the needs of the fan base now, and how do we better serve them to provide what they need the ballpark to be. And it's not just sitting there with 40,000 people in their seats and nobody moves. That's not the way the game is consumed. And the sport is, you want it to be. I want everyone to be sitting there with their scorebook out and doing it, but that's just not the way I could force everyone to do that, and then the game just gets passed behind. I want that place to be where everyone wants to hang out 4 or 5 nights a week. I want people to be leaving their jobs and going, let's head down to the ballpark. Let's go hang out. Even if it's for 3 or 4 innings, that is better to get people in the door and having them there and having a good time. Even if it's for a short time, is better than nobody being there and you being forgotten in an irrelevant place that no one cares about. So I applaud them for trying. And it appears like, I've seen the renderings. I know, talking to you about it seems like they've done a pretty good job. There have been certainly some things since when they started this. What was it, 2014? When they started this, obviously they've swung and missed at some stuff in right field, and they heard about it. But I think overall, they're just as much as we're kind of watching them do it. They're trial and erroring things that are going to be important. You're like, did they know that the corner was going to become what it was? Did they know at the time how crazy people would be for it? Maybe they had an idea, but you kind of see what people react to, what they don't like, and then you adapt off of that. So I'll be curious to see how people take in the new parts of this ballpark. And I can't wait to see it myself.
Look, as someone who has the privilege of seeing what all these places look like when they're full, Progressive Field, I've seen it filled hundreds of times. I've seen it thousands of times. I've seen it filled hundreds of times, and it's still one of the best environments in baseball. and it's one of the most visually appealing ballparks. So they've done a great job maintaining it for 31 years now, and when that place is rocking, it's hard to beat. So I feel like we all, like everybody in Cleveland has you feel a little bit of ownership over it. And that's how it should be.
Yeah, it's the idea. Now, as far as the big clubhouse goes, I think you got to just partition some of that off. You don't earn that until you start winning some games. If you win some games, we'll open up more parts of that clubhouse for you to enjoy. You got to earn that.